And welcome to another edition of South Texas Crossfire. This is Attorney Joe Flores reminding you to join us each and every week right here on KTMV with the Lopez family. Don Humberto Lopez celebrating 50 years in broadcasting. His son Carlos at the helm running everything, and all the Lopez family who makes this program happen. And don't forget about Channel 21, soon to be Channel 23, Time Warner in San Antonio, and we're also on CBS in Laredo right after CSI and right before Wheel of Fortune on the weekend. And we go 80 miles, our signal does, penetrating into Mexico. And let's not forget, we're loaded up on YouTube. You can see us anytime, 24 hours a day if you miss our program. www.youtube.com. Search term either Joe Flores or South Texas Crossfire. With me today, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing yet again Joel Gonzalez, attorney at law here in Corpus Christi and all of South Texas. How are you?
I'm doing excellent.
Well, look, Joel, let's just jump in feet first. Everybody went bananas. They were thanking me for the bankruptcy program. We hadn't had one on like that before, especially with a home loan crisis, with all of the mortgage stuff, you know, the government taking over Freddie and Fannie and whoever else knows, Mr. and Mrs. Mac, whatever that means. And they're coming in there. These are dire financial times. This is an election year. And also, we're looking at the working man. He's going to pull the lever and vote for whoever he thinks is most qualified. We've seen the Democrats and the Republicans come out strong. This is not a political show, but this is a political issue. It's involving the fabric of America, the working man, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Workers' compensation, not just here in Texas, but we're just going to talk about in general the injured worker in the United States, and we'll zoom out there. Then the second half, just to signpost a little bit, we're going to be talking about disability. We're going to be talking about the Social Security aspects of disability. And when people hit rock bottom or injured and just simply can't get back to work, sometimes they're going to have to get on SSI. And so we're going to be talking about all those issues, but we're going to center it around the center stage. And my hat goes off to the working man and woman in our society that are living paycheck to paycheck, that have families, that have kids in school, that are doing the very best they can, but sometimes they get injured, don't they?
That's true. And, you know, the workers' compensation system is actually a system that is both for the benefit of the employer and the employee. And this is how it's supposed to work. When an employer has workers' compensation insurance, and we have an injury by the injured worker, the workers' compensation system is supposed to facilitate medical benefits for the injured worker, and also if the employee is unable to return to work because of the creation of the disability, and in most cases it's a temporary disability by the work-related injury. If the employee cannot return, then the employee is entitled to receive temporary disability benefits through the workers' compensation system. As a pro, I guess from the employer side, generally speaking, the employee can't sue the employer because they have workers' comp, and the workers' compensation is supposed to take care of the injured worker.
And does it happen like that often, that we've got the employer paying for the injured worker? I mean, the system has its bumps in the roads that we're going to be talking about, but certainly many workers are taken care of, and it prevents the lawsuits. But in your opinion, who does it benefit more, the worker or the employer?
For the most part, well, I'm going to say it's a little of both. I don't think it's necessarily one-sided, but in some respects, I would have a tendency to believe that it benefits the employer a little bit more than it does the employee. But on the flip side, there are some benefits for the employee as well. Sometimes it doesn't go as smoothly as one would expect. We live in a society where we just don't want to acknowledge that we're injured sometimes. We have these workers who may work at arduous jobs that are physically demanding, labor intensive, require a lot of stamina or endurance. You know, hey, look at the refinery workers.
Oh, yeah.
You know, look at the street workers, the ones that repair roads. I mean, we're talking about those jobs are physically demanding, and generally we're talking about tough individuals. Sometimes when they get injured, for whatever reason, maybe they don't want to say, well, I just injured myself. A lot of times, and this is what I find in my practice, someone gets injured and they trivialize their injury. Oh man, it's nothing. And I'm talking like the common person, because that's what I usually hear coming out of their mouth. I didn't really think it was anything. I thought it would just go away. I thought it was just a sprain. However, I woke up the next day and I couldn't even get out of bed. I mean, that's something that I have found in my practice to be not so uncommon. It's not so uncommon. Somebody injures their back. They think it's nothing. They don't report it. The next day they can't get out of bed because their back injury was more severe than they thought.
Well, you brought up a very interesting point, because often, you know, what stereotypically, because I'm an employer also, I mean, we've got a home health and we've got people at work and et cetera, et cetera. And so from the employer standpoint, I don't think the system is set up, because many people are what we call non-subscribers, because the workman's comp insurance itself, the workers' compensation insurance, many employers, small businessmen, just can't afford to buy it. It's costly, thousands of dollars per month, but if you don't have it, and we'll be talking about that, and this is a whole show altogether that's different, but if you don't have it and you're known as a non-subscriber, oftentimes you waive some of your defenses if somebody sues you. So it's, as Mr. Gonzalez said, and if you have any questions, general questions, remember, this show does not constitute legal advice. We're just, I'd like to think, a supplement to the Texas Bar, the Legal Referral Information Service, providing some information, but every case is different, and you have the absolute right to contact a qualified attorney of your choice. Phone book, My Texas Bar, online, whatever. Get the help you need, but we're going to be covering this general area. So you brought up the great example that people sort of minimalize their own injuries. Oftentimes, everybody blames everything on the employer and says, wait a minute, they're the ones who trivialize, they're the ones who minimize. But the worker, in fact, himself maybe is afraid, number one, maybe he is machismo, or he or she is machismo and doesn't want to admit that they are hurt. But oftentimes, they're afraid to admit they're hurt, because then you get blackballed. Then you lose overtime. Then you get in a workman's comp system that it's not paying the bills, like especially these overtime workers.
That is exactly right. A lot of times it's the injured worker, him or herself, that actually throws a wrench in his or her claim, because they did trivialize their injuries and they didn't report it on time. And sometimes, I mean, it's a legitimate excuse if, in fact, that's a defense, by the way, and I don't want to go too in detail with the law, but a lot of times, if it was reasonable, if it was a reasonable basis to trivialize the injury, and that's why you didn't report it, and you finally realize, hey, this isn't as trivial as I thought, and you report it, and if you have the right set of facts, you can overcome that waiver. Because generally, Joe, you're supposed to report your injury within 30 days from the time that it occurred, or else you waive your workers' comp remedy. But like I said, occasionally it's acceptable. It can be an excuse, an exception to the reporting requirement of reporting that injury within 30 days.
Well, let me stop you right there. Wait a minute, because a lot of people out there assume that I slip, I hurt myself at work, I lift a bag of salt pellets, you know, on a dock or something, and I throw out my back. They've got workers' compensation. Aren't they supposed to report it right away? Because if they reported day 29, they'll say, well, you could have been lifting at home for your wife, throwing out the garbage with these new green garbage cans that weigh 10,000 pounds. You know, you could have injured it there. Doesn't that almost put you in jeopardy of blowing your whole claim? People will say, you must have heard it somewhere else. Why did you wait 29 days?
That's exactly right. Even though the law allows you to make the claim within 30 days, certainly it is not advisable for an injured worker to do so. It is extremely important to report the injury immediately.
Okay.
If you can report it as soon as it's happened, or if it was witnessed, talk to the witness and say, did you see what happened? I just hurt my back or my knee or whatever the case may be, but you need to report it as soon as possible. As a matter of fact, Joe, a lot of people may get injured on a Friday. And this is a prime example. This example I'm going to give you is a flag that the insurance companies will pick up on. This is from the workers' comp insurance companies. I don't want to talk too much about them, but this is what I see in my practice.